What happened in the sprint?
For the Chinese Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton on top, Ferrari on top, never doubted it. Never doubted it 1 second coming into this weekend that Hamilton would be quick and bounce back from Australia. And
you said it, didn't you, all along?
I did. I think we got slightly mixed up in the editing for predictions where I said a big flop. I actually said...
Editor did you dirty there?
Yeah. It was complete and utter syncing up with my audio and doing some weird things. Anyway, yes, Hamilton P1, what a win. Dominating display. I can't quite believe that not only obviously Hamilton getting pole, because we thought it was all for McLaren, but the race pace. What's going on?
It was unbelievable race pace from Hamilton. And I think particularly, when Oscar Piastri got through on Verstappen, we all thought, right, now McLaren can show what they've got. Let's watch him absolutely reel him in. And Hamilton, pulled away. And, an amazing performance from Hamilton. His start as well was very Schumacher-esque, watching him just cut over completely to the side to cover off Verstappen, which is exactly what he needed to do. Super aggressive at the start on his old rival Max. And, what a win for him to literally the second race, as it were. I know it's a sprint race, but second race of the year, and he's already won for Ferrari.
Yep, first win for Ferrari and Charles Leclerc.
Lewis.
Question from P1 Patreon member Sam. Is the Ferrari race pace promising for tomorrow? Both Charles and Lewis looked fastest on track at the end. I'm not starting to dream. I am slightly, but I'm not starting to dream. The championship is very much back on. But 100% promising. Obviously, you have to take into the account the factors of Hamilton was the lead car, and it was clear that a lot of drivers were struggling on their tyres. A lot of graining. Obviously, Norris was in trouble from a very early stage. But Hamilton, of course, led the way, but it's not an autopilot. He still has to drive the car, and we've seen, with the likes of McLaren, for example, it is not as easy as it is potentially displayed and shown and portrayed to dominate or to drive away in a car that might be fastest. Hamilton, has shown that there is some really good pace there. But what I'm interested to see is if McLaren later on today can bounce back in qualifying, lock up the front row or whatever whatever's possible for them. Does that then change the complexion of the race completely? And if Hamilton's stuck in a bit of traffic, do we see that same pace? And of course, you then throw in the element of strategy as well. When they pit, obviously they're not going to stay out on tyres that are graining so heavily. It could change the complexion once more. So I don't think it's going to be a Hamilton Sunday masterclass where he wins by 30 seconds. But then again, I said he was going to be a big flop. So don't listen to anything that I say.
I think this might be... We've criticised the sprint, haven't we, in the past for being a spoiler for the main race. I can't remember a time where the sprint has been kind of left us asking more questions than kind of before even the race. We went into this weekend thinking, based on Australia, McLaren domination, they're going to dominate. They've messed up qualifying. Even in the sprint, they'll fly through the field. And actually, we're going to go into qualifying now. And of course, Hamilton drove a brilliant race and Ferrari looked very good. But it kind of... don't think it necessarily means that it's going to happen again. And that's a great thing for Formula One, because we were kind of a little bit worried after the first race that we might see some kind of domination from one particular team. But it's kept us guessing. And I love the fact that we've had a sprint and we could see a completely different order in qualifying again. And we don't know how it's going to go in the main race, which is, keeps us guessing. And I think that's a great thing for F1. But you can't doubt that Ferrari, their pace did look good. But I think you alluded to this, that when you're ahead, it helps a lot because, my word, people were struggling. You look at the likes of Antonelli and Mercedes couldn't get past the RB. Lando took ages to get past. And Aston Martin, even much quicker cars, were really struggling to pass.
Yeah, it's one of those tracks, right, where dirty air is quite significant. There's a lot of medium speed corners in those first couple of sectors, just long corners, just to really help with the degradation and the tyre temperature spikes of the tyres. So it's no surprise that the drivers were struggling out there on quite a sunny day. And of course, the track's a little bit of an unknown quantity as well, with it being newly resurfaced and it's constantly ramping up. So yeah, I think having a sprint round here was, I guess, from an entertainment perspective, really good, because the lack of data and not knowing how this track was going to react has caused a bit of an upset in the sense of the expectation of McLaren walking this Grand Prix weekend. Next question. Bray Lenrojo. Is the Ferrari versus Sauber championship fight over? Great question. That's a really good question. Yes, it's over. I'm sorry. I didn't expect, even to say after one race of this season, that Sauber would have more points than Ferrari, but that happened. But it's a humbling experience. Being a Ferrari fan is a humbling experience, and me being a Charles Leclerc fan more specifically, this was a very humbling experience. I can absolutely respect the job that Hamilton has done, and I am fully expecting a Charles Leclerc masterclass in qualifying later on today, and we'll see exactly the same thing from Charles. But that, delusion, realism, we'll see where it lands. But yes, Ferrari. I'm not going to jump to too many conclusions right now, but that was such a performance that it gives me hope, which is really scary.
The man that was waving an Italian flag after FP2 when Charles was first, and now they've actually won a sprint race, and you're like, just stay calm, everyone.
Just got to be...
keep the hype down. I don't want to believe too early.
I've only been hurt 45 times in the last year.
This is quite a funny question, though, because last week we thought, Ferrari, they look terrible. I know it was a very unusual race, but it makes for such an exciting season if we are going to have such kind of changes from race to race. And going into this season, we said that it could be so close that you just nail the setup, or you have a great qualifying and you're in clean air, you can kind of outperform the car. And, on paper, it was a McLaren 1-2 every day of the week, and they've finished second and eighth. So that's the beauty of Formula One, that it keeps us guessing.
Next question, P1 Patreon member, Abu Dhabi 2021 survivor. Should McLaren fans hit the worry button as he couldn't pass Stroll? He, of course, being Lando Norris. It was, I guess, a concerning performance in the sense of that McLaren doesn't seem to be the overall package that perhaps they were expecting coming into the season, and we were expecting, at least on the tyres that we saw in the sprint today. Oscar couldn't obviously get anywhere near Hamilton at the end of the race, albeit had been following Verstappen quite closely for the 19 laps. Norris, of course, he made that mistake, which it's not great for his confidence. We come off the back of Australia, right? He's won the race. We're all good. We're going to build from this. Lando's going to continue this sort of championship momentum. Of course, he's not thinking about it. That's what he tells the media. But we're thinking about it. Everyone's thinking about it. Everyone thinks about the championship at this stage of the year. You have to. So for Norris and for McLaren fans, I wouldn't be hitting the worry just yet, just purely because I do genuinely think that, at least in clean air, McLaren are the fastest package. So as long as Lando delivers in qualifying, he made a mistake, obviously, he made a couple of mistakes, in fact, in sprint qualifying. Eradicate those, get one good lap in, start in the top three, and I think it'll be a completely different story. But Lando, from what it seemed, he overdid that first lap. And it's a trend that we maybe have seen a little bit of Lando and his engineer talking about not overdriving the car. The pace is there. And perhaps Lando just tried a little bit too hard, made that mistake on lap one, fell back. And then the difficulty in overtaking is not just what we saw with Lando, but up and down the field. So once you're there, you're kind of stuck, especially in a race where you can't deploy strategy. So 1 point is not what I expected from Lando in this particular sprint. But as we said yesterday, if it's going to happen, It's good to happen in a sprint rather than the main race, and I fully expect him to be back up there in qualifying later.
Yeah, you shouldn't worry too much about the kind of difficulty to overtake, because that happened to everyone throughout the field, like I mentioned earlier. Antonelli was so close to Tsunoda and couldn't make the move. Sort of drivers kind of up and down the field. It was only really probably Lawson that managed to get past people, and that was...
And Oscar, of course.
And Oscar, yeah, on Max. But it was a very difficult kind of track to overtake. George's move in particular, just while we're talking about overtakes, was really, really good. To kind of do that early in the race, because it looked like at the end Charles had a load of pace, but couldn't quite make it stick on George at the end. But back to Lando, I'm less worried about the fact that he couldn't overtake Stroll, because it was a difficult track to overtake on. I'm more worried at the kind of signs that, after we mentioned what happened in qualifying for the sprint and how he's made some mistakes, he needs to kind of bounce back from that and not have them creeping in again, because that was just kind of Achilles' heel last year. For him to kind of do another start and then drop positions is a worrying sign. He's lucky that it is only the sprint, but of course the big kind of feeling after Melbourne was Lando sorted his problems out. He can and he can still absolutely win this championship, no doubt. It's literally like one mistake in the sprint race, but it's still kind of a worrying sign that it kind of felt like a repeat of watching last year, watching him kind of mess up on the first lap, drop back, and then have a difficult race.
Yeah, for sure. I think this weekend there's been a few mistakes. He's made mistakes in sprint qualifying. He's made a mistake in the sprint race as well. He just needs to bounce back now for the main qualifying and main race, where the big points are scored. And then once what I said yesterday, it will be forgotten in a lot of ways if Lando wins tomorrow. So, we'll see how that one unfolds. Next question. P1 Patreon member Rebecca. What is the reason for the difference in team performance between here and Australia? Is it the track or changes to the cars? I think the beauty of Formula One, and the reason why, last year we saw so many teams be quick at different tracks, is because we are so close in terms of performance now. Some car characteristics work better at some tracks. So like Australia is a massively different circuit to China. We then go to Japan, which maybe is slightly more China than it is Australia, but still you're kind of trying to find similarities because the beauty of it is that Formula One tracks these days are so varied and so awesome. And then you throw in the likes of sprint weekends and teams still getting used to their new package and how they set up the car. It's not we've built this car for 2025. From race one, we know how to do it. We know how to make everything. We know how to put everything together perfectly. That's not the case. They are all learning on the fly. So that's another reason, of course, you throw in that in qualifying in Australia, they were thinking about the race and the fact it was going to be wet. So it was a completely different setup again. So with Formula One, lots of different factors. But, you have a rough pecking order, but that's the reason why it chops and changes.
And that's the way it absolutely should be. If we don't, you look at kind of performance from testing and you just think, okay, McLaren or even the pace that we saw in qualifying in Melbourne, McLaren 1-2 every race. Okay, it's not going to happen for anyone else. But more variables in the sport is what makes the results better. And it's not as easy as just kind of running a simulation and going, we've got the quickest car, we're going to win. In that race, Piastri is a great example that when he got past Max, we thought, right, he's going to fly up to the back of Hamilton now. And if anything, he did. He lost quite a massive chunk of time. It's kept us guessing a lot into the main race, which I'm actually really excited for because a lot of questions haven't been answered, and I like that fact.
Yeah, we all do. We don't want to have a predicted race coming up, although if Hamilton does win by 30 seconds, then maybe
Charles can do it, right?
Please. It was... Yeah, getting mugged by George Russell was obviously not ideal at the start. George did a brilliant move into the hairpin, which kind of scuppered Charles's race. I think he's securing a P3 without George going through at the start there. So, yeah, a slightly quiet start to the weekend for Charles, but we bounced back. We got quali coming up. Please.
Of course, if he'd got George, he'd have overtaken Stroll in the championship as well, but not quite yet.
Lance Stroll beat Fernando Alonso by 13 seconds in the sprint. So Lance Stroll once again reaffirming number one driver at Aston Martin.
Team Stroll, it's happening.
I think we also maybe just touch upon Liam Lawson making some small steps of progress, I will say, finishing 14th in the sprint. A glimmer of hope of going to wheel-to-wheel racing, putting noses in from very far back. It felt like one of them was going to go wrong at some point, but it didn't. I think you can only have. Of course, he actually did have a little bit of front wing damage, didn't he, when he made contact with the Alpine. But overall, I think it'll be something that he. I think if we're talking about learning. Liam is learning, I think, every single lap he turns in that car of how on earth to tame this bull. So let's see. I hope for his sake he doesn't qualify 20th again, because that was a small step in the right direction for Liam.
It was. If he just gets a clean run, famous last words, but if he gets a clean run in qualifying, surely he's not going to be last or out in Q1 again. But I know he was racing much lesser cars, but he did look confident on the brakes, kind of, let's say, from very far back. He kind of knows he's got a good car underneath him. It's just about learning how to drive it and how to kind of extract it, because that was the problem, wasn't it, in qualifying, sprint qualifying, and getting the tyres in. So yeah, he provided a lot of the racing action at the back. Him, Hadjar as well, kind of rubbishing any rumours that there's nothing to play for between the bottom teams. They're still very much racing, even though it does absolutely nothing, because it doesn't kind of define the grid anymore. Or
someone that needed reminding of that was Jack Doohan on the final lap, just sending it quite unnecessarily, I would say.
Yeah,
causing damage.
It's not good. He doesn't need to be doing stuff like that.
Just don't give Alpine excuses.
Yeah, don't give them anything to. You had a great qualifying road and had a spin, and you kind of don't want to make any bad headlines. You just kind of need to be quiet, really. So gutting for him. Right,
that's it. We're done. We're wrapped up. Pretty quick one, but of course it is just the sprint race that we are covering. So we'll be live later on, of course, as always, on Twitch and YouTube for the main qualifying session, as well as, of course, tomorrow for the race. And yeah, can't wait for it. Ferrari on top. Hamilton, an absolute masterclass today. Can he deliver again in qualifying and into Sunday? Hopefully. I also hope Charles will be there as well, because I need it for my own emotional stability. We'll see you very soon. Lots of love. Take care. Bye.